Okay, we've got the brickwork to do now on our outhouse thing. So we're going to start by painting in the stone grey, which will be the mortar. And then I'm going to use a combination of hull red and chocolate brown to get the brick colour that I want and be able to get some bricks of slightly different shades. Then it's just a case of giving it a wash in the in a slightly darkened grey of this. So we'll add a bit of hull red to the stone grey and give the whole thing a bit of a wash, and then we'll probably give it a bit of a dry brush as well, and then we are done. So let's start with our stone grey. Don't need to worry about neatness at this stage because all we really want it to do is settle in between the bricks. Okay, we'll let that dry off, and now we can focus on the rest of the build. Okay, I'm going to get a bigger brush and I'll get back to you when this is done. Right, time to get this winter coat onto our tiger here. So I'm happy with the base colouring of the tiger now. So my first job is just to make sure we've not got any dust or jumper hairs that have settled on her. Always good to have an anti-static brush to hand. Paint. I did toy with doing white enamel, but the white 34 is very bright white, so I wanted something a little darker. And then I remembered I had a set of Hataka early World War II German AFV paints, and in there is temporary white. And again, it's quite a bright white, but by the time we've dry brushed some blue over it and what have you, dirtied it up a little bit, should be okay. So I'm going to give this a good shake and we are going to brush it on. Now, not airbrush, paintbrush. The reason is when I've got very limited resources in terms of original references for this, but in the one good clear picture I've got, which covers the front and side face of the vehicle, it's quite clear that it is uneven, that it's patchy, and that it has probably been put on in the field by a brush. So I'm going to try and emulate that, I think. So probably a small flat brush, but I need to mix my paint up first, so let's do that. Okay, so I've not used this paint before, so I don't know how it's going to go on. So we'll give it a go. I'm using a 3mm flat brush for this. And we're going to start by doing what I can see in my reference pictures, and then we'll patch together what else we know. And my very first starting point is this section here, which you can see was white. So we're going to take a little bit of our paint. I've not thinned it at this stage because it's airbrush ready, so this is the first time trying to put this on, so we'll see how this goes. Well, that's not so bad. Okay, so that is our first bit, and then next to that we have another section that's more in a straight line. There you go, and we get that unevenness from the paintbrush that emulates what I can see in the picture. It's not quite straight, so that's more like what I'm seeing in the picture. And we can go in and just put brush marks in to give it the idea that it was done by a scale brush. So that's starting to get us where we need to be. We have quite a large section at the back that's white, which takes us pretty much up to our marking, just falls short of our marking. So let's have a look at that, because that's quite a big section to do. It doesn't include the box on the end. The box on the end is standing out as not being in that white. Yeah, I think this Hataka paint's going to work out okay. I'm not putting too much on my brush. Again, we're looking for uneven, because if this was painted on in the field, you can imagine it took quite some time. And then we have I'm going to put this edge in, sort of bows back like that. Now, I did have the ability to spray paint in the field, so it's always worth checking your references. Some of it is definitely done by brush, and some definitely by spray painting, so do have a look. Okay, that looks a little bit scruffy even for what we're trying to do, so might let that dry and come back and give that bit a second coat. So now we can come here and we have a small attempt here at going around the markings. So we have I'm putting that in as a wedge, my first bit there, and then it sort of comes back like that, and about there it's doing that. So we can fill that space in now. Okay, then our next one along is pretty much starting there, following that shape, and it has a little bit of a flick out like that, which is actually sharper than that, so we'll put that in with the brush. And then that goes down like so. looking suitably wintry now, isn't it? And then we've got one last one, which means that this one's probably a bit narrow looking at it, so quite a thin gap here, so starting there, going down, and then that's sort of almost joined up but not. We're gonna go down about there. Then we just need to widen that. There's quite a wide gap, so it's sort of terminating there. Okay, so that's our first side done. I'm going to let that dry. We'll probably thin the paint a little bit to do a second coat, just to deepen the colour saturation. But we've got our pattern in, so that's our starting point. Then when we come round here, it carries along the front face. So what I think we might do next is the turret area. So interestingly, I think that was probably white originally and has got scuffed up, but the smoke discharges have been left clearly not whitened. So I'm going to do that. I'll let you watch and we'll see how we get on. Okay, I'm going to carry on and I'll come back to you when it's done. So one of the things that I'm doing while I'm dry brushing is just trying to give the paint a sort of a more worn down sort of look. You can do this by obviously spraying a very thinned mix of paint over the top, but it's like a lot of techniques. If you're not careful, it's not right. And it's like if I gave this a spray over, it would be uneven and it would dumb everything down. And I don't necessarily want that, because you can see here what I'm able to do is the areas where you wouldn't get into quite so easily with feet and what have you. I'm able to highlight and keep them a brighter white just by keeping the brush away from them. So for me, I'm getting a better effect doing it with the dry brushing. Now we will put like a filter over the top, a grimy filter, which will probably be a sort of a slightly mucky colour rather than a grey, so more of an orangey browny type colour. And we'll do a little bit of streaking as well, which will break it up and what have you. So this isn't by any means the end of the process. We're still more towards the start of the process. But it does allow us to bring out the details, and the dry brushing technique for me allows us to just keep control of what we want to do and how we want this to look. So you'd imagine people are walking around on these things all the time. They got serviced fairly regularly. They had to be serviced every 50 miles, which, you know, isn't very far on a fast-moving battlefront. So, yeah, of course, dry brushing will also highlight any imperfections, so you have to be aware of that. And when we put some tools and things on and break it all up, it should look fine. There we go. So you can see, that's coming along nicely. And it just breaks it up, tones it down, takes the whiteness down a little bit, and as we build it up and get it where we want to be, it'll start doing what we want to do. Okay, I'm going to carry on and show you what the finished result is before the next stage. Okay, painting the curtains now. You can see that the main colour that we've used is Humbrol 102, which is a sort of a limey green colour. And I'd done a little bit of research, and green was quite a popular colour in the 30s for things like curtains and soft furnishings and the like. So even though we're in Russia, I decided this would be a good fit and a nice contrast to the blue door. And we're painting this like we're painting a figure. So we've given it a first all over coat, which has dried and hardened up the curtain a little bit. And then we're going in and we're doing this second coat, which pretty much is going over everything as well. And as you'll see in a minute, what we'll then do is we'll start changing that up a little bit and try and put some shadow and some highlighting. So the curtain was glued to a cocktail stick, which is how we've done the gathering. We've let it dry. It was shaped with water and PVA glue. Let it all dry. Then we've painted it. Invariably, when you're brush painting these things, it needs more than one coat. But this process is the same process I use for canvas tarpaulins and things like that. So at this stage, we're just putting the base colours down. Now, actually, I might have told you that wrong. I think the limey green is 36. The 102 is the darker green that you can see I'm just starting to mix. So what I want to do is I want to do some shading now on the curtains. And one of the good things about painting tissue is it dries really quite quickly. So This is a continual process. I'm not leaving it for a particular length of time to dry off. We're just getting stuck in. So we've got the 102. You just saw me thinning it. We're adding some of the 36 into it to lighten it up a little bit and key it to the original colour effectively. So like I said, this is just like painting figures. Now that darker colour is going to be painted into all the sort of the recesses and low points in the texture of the curtains. So we start very carefully, just highlighting some of the real deep areas, and then we'll start to expand it out from there. It's all about eye, and what's really important at this point is having some really good light that gives you a combination of shadow, and you can then use that shadow fall as a guide to where you want to be painting the shadow into your curtains. You want to end up with something that in any light has shadow and has highlighted high points. So you're basically painting the light effects into the material. So having your overhead light, or however you illuminate, at an angle so that you get some natural shadow fall really helps the process of where you're going to put your dark paint. So I did move the light for this little bit here. So you can see already we've got some darkness being added there. Let's move it on a little bit and see what it looks like. So getting to the back end of the process of putting that darker paint down, and you can already see that we've added a fair amount of definition to the curtain material there. You've got to remember this is going to be viewed through a window, so you want to be able to make it obvious what's going on, like I say, regardless of the light on the diorama. Right, with that done, we need to clean the brush, but I use the same brush all the way through. It doesn't really matter because we're doing variations of the same colour. And what you can see here is I'm taking out some of the original base colour there, and then we're going to, just to save it and preserve it for what we might do going forward, and I'm just using what's left to further lighten the dark colour that we were doing. That way I can tie it into what we've just done. So if you think about shadow, it's darker at the bottom, so we're now doing the next layer. So this is sort of still dark but not as dark as it was before, is the easiest way of explaining it. So if you think about a crease, at the bottom of the crease you want it to be very dark. At the top of the crease you want it to be light, and we're now doing the in-between bit where it transitions from dark to light. So that's the easiest way that I can describe it. So where we've got this area here where the curtain is sort of swung back a little bit from a draft or something like that, we're able to fill in the area between the light and dark with this colour. So that's what we're doing. We're just adding a little bit more shading. It ties it all in a little bit and stops you having two stark colours effectively, and we'll carry on doing that as we go through. Now we might end up lightening some colours, which is why I saved a little bit of paint to one side, because I might add a touch of white to it. Let's just see how we get on, but that's what we're doing here. So I'm going back to my original palette colour of 36 here. If you remember, there was some of the 102 on the side of that. So basically we just mixed it in, thinned it down a little bit more, so that I had something that was slightly darker, but just a tonal difference from the original colour. And I'm using that to do the highlighting of the raised points now. So again, it's another shade. It's not quite as bright as the original colour, but we can see it's starting to add further definition to the curtain, and I think it's starting to look quite natural now, which I have to be honest, it's just practice, and I'm not saying that I'm particularly great at it, but I'm better at it than I used to be. So yeah, starting to come together now, I feel. And that is my process done pretty much.
So we just take the base colour, then we take it down to dark, and then we build it up with shades, and then end up with our light touches. So the original colour is going on here on top of what we've done, just to highlight the very tops where the light's bouncing off it. And that's our curtains done. I'm pretty happy with them, to be honest. So with the curtain done, I wanted to switch my attention to the tools for the tank. I'm using primarily MIG acrylics for this task, and a fine detailing brush. So the basic colours are gunmetal for the metal parts, and then I'm using old wood, which ironically is the paler wood in the MIG range, for the base colour of anything wood like the handles. I will come back to the bolt cutters as a detail paint later on, because I see lots and lots of people get the bolt cutters wrong, and it's, you know, when you look at the shape of a bolt cutter, I can see why people do it, but there is several things going on with bolt cutters, and they're not what a lot of people think. They're not wooden handles, and they're not the sort of plastic handles. I'm struggling to think of the word, but they're not the plastic handles that people think they are. They're actually made from paper, and there's lots of different colours going on the bolt cutters. So you've got the metal, you've got some wood parts, you've got some paper parts, and they're all slightly different colours. So they're quite a complex little painting job in their own right, the bolt cutters. But here what we're doing is we're just laying the wood down on the hand tools, shovel and lump hammer and the like. Now I've got 3 MIG wood colours, so from the just to add a little bit of variation, I did a couple of the handles in slightly different wood versions. So I think I've got new wood, old wood and worn wood, or something like that. So we picked out different tools with different colours just to make them stand out a little bit as individual tools, I guess. As you can see, it's got quite a lot of tools to do, because we've got a toolbox that needs to be populated with tools and various other bits and pieces, barrels, buckets and the like. So we're cracking on with this right now. Also a good time to tackle the wooden jack block that's on the back of the Tiger. So we painted that in with the wood colours as we had them out. Seemed like the right thing to do. Well, my brain is working again, and the word I was looking for was melamine. So I'm painting in the melamine handles here, and I'm using MIG red-brown base for this, which is MIG 0913, which I think has the right pink hue. Now, like I say, the handles on the bolt cutters are actually compressed paper, and they have a very similar colour, but they're matte and slightly pinker than the melamine, which is a shinier, darker red-brown colour. So the very ends of the handles have that on, but not all of the shank of the handle. I will do a little, once they're all painted up, I will do a little talk through of the colours on the bolt cutters, because they are quite specific. But yeah, that's the colour that we were going with, the red-brown base. It's a really good match for the colour you need. Painting the barrels now, and I'm using Humbrol 106 as a base grey for the barrels. I also use it for the toolbox and the buckets as a base colour, and then we can put some various washers and things on top to change the hue and the effect of those. But this is a really nice base grey colour for anything that's painted grey that's made of metal. Don't know why, just a colour that sort of speaks to me. We're hand brushing it all on. I couldn't be bothered getting my airbrush out, if I'm honest. So as long as your paint is thin enough, which mine wasn't initially, it will go down really well without any brush strokes. So yeah, having quite a bit of fun at this stage, to be honest. Here you can see the toolbox being painted up. It's a little bit delicate because of the photo etch and what have you. But I thought this was a really nice stark colour for the toolbox. I had contemplated doing a green one, but in the end I went with doing both of them a sort of grey colour, and then we can do some effects on it afterwards which will help with that. Plus it's going to be filled with tools as well, so there'll be a lot going on with the toolbox at the end, and a grey is a good base colour for showing off other colours, such as the gunmetal of a lot of the spanners and the like. So this was the paint set that I was using for painting the tools. I don't usually buy paint sets, but in this instance there was 5 out of the 6 paints in here that I wanted, so it was just more economical to buy the set. I will point out that the bolt cutters are shown incorrectly on this box. The colours are not right, but like I say, I'll talk you through that in good time. Well, it feels like it's taken ages to get to this point, but we are finally starting to permanently construct the diorama. Now, the fit of the buildings, you need a lot of dry fitting because they don't fit particularly tightly. The vac form material of the buildings is quite malleable and springy, so you can't really push the building down and get a nice tight gap. You have quite a gap at the bottom, and obviously one of the diorama sins is having a gap at the bottom of your building, because that's just not lifelike. So we will have to go back and do something with that. In this instance that'll be easy. It'll be a combination of gathered leaves and snow, so it'll be easy to cover it up. With the building in place, we could then put the front door step in. So that was actually glued to the building rather than glued to the base, because it's very thin underneath, whereas you've got one big long edge that goes against the back there. And that went in nice and easy, and a little bit of a gap, but yeah, you know what's going to be on there, more snow. So with that done, we could then think about positioning of the barn, or I'm really viewing it as a workshop, to be honest. You'll notice that I removed the roof. It was just easier for painting, to be honest, and on reflection probably should have painted the walls and the roof before I glued them together. It wasn't a big job to take them off, just a little bit of liquid poly, get the joints warmed up again, and prized it off. But the 2 buildings went down really quite well. So that then gets me to putting the fences in place. The one that goes against the building, I'd had to put a little bit of a cutout so that it would sit tightly against that wall, because there's a little bit of a step at the bottom of the building, so we had to get ourselves around that. So again, it's worth dry fitting all of these before you fit them together, as you will see in a minute. So I started the process by putting the fence posts in against the 2 buildings, and then we could start filling in from there. And you can see there's a groove in the base, which is the line for the fence, so nice and easy. Although the fence posts, there's nothing specific for them, they just sit on top. So a bit of glue along the 2 edges that we're going to make contact, and we can put that in, and it sits up on its own accord really quite nicely. So at this point I'm really quite happy. Then we put another fence post in, and my main consideration is that the wet staining that we've done on the post is sympathetic to the position of the wet staining on the fence. So it wasn't just a case of shoving it all together, there was quite a bit of thought going into it. Now I have to let you into a little bit of a secret here. Because I'd done a dry fit test, I knew that I had a problem coming up. And to lessen that problem, I decided to put the gate in at this point. So I did play around with the idea of having the gate open and the fence posts moved in a little bit, which means that in real life the gate wouldn't have closed. But I decided actually the best thing was to have the gate closed and have it spaced correctly. So we put the gate in so that we could put the other gate post in, which would leave us then with just the fence between the two posts, which is where my problem was. And here you can see the problem. The fence sections don't fit, so it was oversized. But because we'd done a lot of playing around with dry fitting, I knew I could trim the fence down by a couple of pieces and make it fit, and you'd never know. Actually, on the real thing, there's a tiny hairline gap, but with such an old rustic fence, that all looks okay as well.
Okay, so we've got our house in place there, the steps in place, then we've got our fence, and we've got our shed. So we've got the gutters to add onto the shed. That'll be next. And I've got a little bit of greenery to add in front of the fences, and I've got a little bit of something I want to put behind the fence, and then we are pretty much on figures, tank finishing, and all the other little bits and pieces that hang around there. So without further ado, let's crack on. Right, my next little task is to add a little bit to behind the fence here. So I've got some twigs that I've collected from the back garden, and I've cut to similar lengths, but obviously I've not made them all exactly the same length, but they're all a similar length. And what I want to do is prop them up against the side of this building here, so behind the fence, and that'll just add a little bit of interest. So simply a little bit of PVA. We'll dip the bottom in the PVA, position it against the wall there. There won't be any glue on the top, so that's not going to cause us any problems, and it'll just be glued in at the bottom is sort of the plan. So let's get on with that. I better get a pair of tweezers, because you know what'll happen if you don't have things to hand. You'll need them. Right, so I suppose start with one of the bigger ones. These are all off my oak tree at the bottom of the garden, which is very kind to me when it comes to leaving sticks and stuff. It gives me plenty, shall we say. So that first one against the fence post and the wall, and there we go. That one's leaning a bit further out, and we'll just keep adding. What I'm looking for is what's the best top to have shown, because obviously the bottom we ain't gonna see. Put plenty on, and obviously a little bit of gravity will help it run down while it's drying, because it's slow drying. Okay, that's a short stumpy one, so go. So it's just trying to think about if someone was stacking these up so that they would dry or something like that to be cut for firewood or something, how would they do it? Or how would I do it? I wouldn't do it like that. Don't lie one across them. That'll look alright. We've got a small one. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Let's see if we can get you down to have a look. That looks alright. Okay, I want to do something with the gate to make it look a bit less like fence and a bit more like gate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some thread. I've got some 0.25 thread here, and what we're going to do is make a little hand pull to hang out of the fence, and possibly a little loop that goes around the post there and sort of holds it. So I think we're definitely going to do both of those actually as we're talking about it. So I do need to drill a little hole into the fence there, and we need to tie a little knot in one end of this. So what I'm imagining is a single piece of rope that has a knot in the end, which is used just to pull the gate closed, and then a loop of rope over it to lock it in place. So no mechanical fastening on the gate at all, which I think is probably quite realistic for the time we're doing. You know, it's a cost-effective way of being able to shut and lock your gate. It wasn't really, in those days, it wasn't really about security so much as practicality. So yeah, we can get the length of that right. It's going to dangle down a little bit, so we do need to drill a hole. Let's check that's running true. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so thinking there's a little dark mark, and that just looks like the right place. Would they do it between the post? And I think probably actually in the post. So hoping that the vibration doesn't break this off. Okay, we are through. Now then, I think that has got it. I can't see the other side because I've got two cameras and my lights in the way. There we go. Dropping it blind, but that's worked. So we are going to want that to hang down. So I'm thinking we mount it about there. So that along. Okay, so we're going to have to glue that down. So a little spot of super glue should be what we need for that. Who keeps putting these cameras in the way? There we go. That looks good. Happy with that. And then I want to do a little loop that goes around the fence and the fence post there. So let's cut some thread off and make that up. Right. Let's just check that that works. So it should go over our post. What's it stuck on the back there? And it should go over that first. Yeah, which it does. We don't want the knot at the front, so I'm just going to trim the knot. And before we do that, we're just going to put a little blob of super glue on the knot just to hold it in place. And you do have to be careful with super glue on thread because it changes the colour. There you go, that will be sufficient to make sure that doesn't come apart. And we can just get in there and give that a trim, and then just want to move the knot around the back. There we go. It's the little details that make that difference. Whilst I've got my drill out, I want to deal with the front door on the house. So the handle that comes in the kit is the same as the one on the basically on the shed here, and it doesn't look right. It's a chunky wooden handle. It's just not right. So I'm going to replace the handle with this brass pin. Obviously the head being the handle part. And then leave the hole at the bottom, because we've got 2 pins on the kit handle, as sort of like the lock. And although it doesn't look perfect, it'll give you the right impression. So I just want to drill a hole where this is going to go, and we might just be able to push it in with a bit of luck. Yeah. Nice. Right. Let me just clean that up and we'll fix it in with a bit of CA. Our next job is the guttering, and I've just put it together upside down on my mat so that as I glue this together it's all nice and flat. You don't even attempt to do it any other way than that. You really need it on a flat surface. So I'm going to find the first join, and what we're going to do, because the joins are painted, we're going to just going to paint some on. That'll start cooking the paint, if you like. Put that together, and then with this much thinner needle brush, we're just going to paint some glue in the back there where it won't be seen. Now we've got more painting to do on this, so don't worry too much about removing the paint in the wash at this stage. What we've got at the moment is a fairly pristine gutter, and that's not how I want it at all. So do the same again here. I'm wiping most of the excess off, so I don't want it to run underneath and cause me problems like that. We're just enough so that the glue, when we put it on, stays where it is. There we go, and then we can just glue the back of that. Okay, looking good. Was that it? 2 joints? Yeah, I think so. Right. So we'll just leave that to dry for a minute. And then we've got the downpipe to deal with. Now, we're going to put this together, but I'm going to put the actual downpipe on last, because we might have to do something to adjust the fit and the direction that we want it, so on and so forth. And I do want water running out of this, so we just need to think about it a little bit. There we go. That should be nice and straight now, but just by putting it on the flat surface, making sure both of those connecting points, the brackets for the walls, are touching, we know that they're level. Quick way of just checking you've got things straight. Okay, so hopefully we can now check the fit of the downpipe to the gutter. Yep, that looks good. So we can install this and then do some further painting. we have our gutter on. So that's the end of the construction of the buildings. So now we're on to the scenery, and I'm starting with some tufts of grass. Then we've got some leaves to put on, and then the snow, which will be a combination of a product from Tamiya and some stuff to bulk up underneath. So we'll probably use damp white tissue paper in things like the gutters where we want to build up snow, so we don't have to use so much of the snow product basically. So first thing we're going to do is put some grass tufts on, and that includes a couple in the gutter. So these are quite good. Obviously you can do things to change the colours of them a little bit. You can dry brush them and spray them, whatever. And they have an adhesive bottom so that you can just stick them in place, or you can use a dab of glue. That looks suitably like some grass growing in the gutter, and I think I'd like to perhaps have another one in the gutter as well. And I think that'll look quite good, sticking out from the snow build-up that we'll put in there. So the other places that we want these are on the grass here, and that's just going to add some texture, a bit of height, break up the fence edge a little bit. Okay, so I've not used this paint before, so I don't know how it's going to go on. So we'll give it a go. I'm using a 3mm flat brush for this. And we're going to start by doing what I can see in my reference pictures, and then we'll patch together what else we know. And my very first starting point is this section here, which you can see was white. So we're going to take a little bit of our paint. I've not thinned it at this stage because it's airbrush ready, so this is the first time trying to put this on, so we'll see how this goes. Oh, that's not so bad. Okay, so that is our first bit, and then next to that we have another section that's more in a straight line. Okay, I'm going to carry on and I'll come back to you when it's done.